Technology Academic Staff Union received the requested document for a compensation review package from the Finance Ministry. It follows a meeting with the Finance Ministry yesterday. Now, academic staff at UTech were upset about a lack of progress in their compensation talks. Public Relations Officer for the University of Technology Academic Staff Union, Dr. Tashika Burris-Melville, says the document was received Thursday evening. She says her members have been instructed to resume duties.
The meeting yielded positive outcomes. We are now in receipt of the proposed document. Now that we're in receipt of the proposed document, we will share with the general membership of UTASU for review. Then we will begin the negotiation process with UTEC's management. At this time, there are no timelines to complete the review of this document.
Now, academic staff at UTech took action to withhold the grades of students in protest over the government's failure to engage the union about a compensation review agreement. As the country continues to battle the flu season, an appeal for the beefing up of the country's secondary health facilities. The call from the opposition comes as it's predicted that there will be an uptick in the number of respiratory illnesses in the coming weeks. Halshane Burke reports.
The opposition wants increased investments in the country's health centers. The appeal comes as it's predicted that there will be an increase in persons suffering from the flu and other respiratory illnesses. Junior Shadow spokesman on health, Jesse James Clark, says the investment is necessary as it will provide a buffer for the country's hospitals, which are already buckling under pressure. Our news center has been informed that some facilities are almost at capacity, while some have had to create additional space to deal with flu-like related cases.
So especially our clinics, we want them to ensure that they have the nebulizers and oxygen to deal with the patients that are coming in. For those milder cases that can be dealt with at the primary healthcare facilities, we want them to be treated there so the hospitals are not burdened. And for the hospitals, we want to ensure that they don't run out of oxygen and they have sufficient nebulizers to treat our patients, especially our children, because young asthmatics tend to have a increased risk of having these respiratory illnesses at this time of the year.
And with the heightened risk of contracting the flu, Mr. Clark is suggesting that Jamaicans return to mask wearing. This, he says, may be especially useful for students and administrators who will return to classes come next week.
So wherever you have persons gathering, while we don't have any type of mandate, we're not asking for mandatory mask wearing, we're encouraging it. So persons who are in large areas, so persons who will be gathering in the classroom, even our healthcare workers, those persons who might be going to different functions, working in offices where we don't have enough fresh air coming in and so on, poor ventilation, we encourage all those persons to wear their masks.
Halshane Burke, TVJ News.
An appeal this afternoon for the authorities to address the drainage system in a section of Grand Spen in St. Thomas. The residents in the community say their properties and lives are at risk. More in this report.
We're going to face a bad thing over the years if we don't deal with it now.
A resident of Grand Spen in St. Thomas sounding the alarm about unfinished work carried out by China Harbour Engineering Company Czech. According to the residents, the drainage system in their community was significantly impacted by floodwaters following heavy rainfall recently, and since then, they've been living on edge.
They came back weeks ago to do over back some of the drainage. But what happened is that they left it premature. As you can see around here, there are a lot of unfinished work done. And all of this unfinished work is going to affect the community in a significant way.
When our news team visited the location, we were pointed to the affected areas by residents who explained how their homes have been impacted.
When the water comes, it does come and does take away all of this debris here and carry it back down into the community, bank up. Then when it bank up now, the water pitch off back in a different home. And we have a lot of debris to clean back out of the home them. We don't have a drainage system to take the water through the community and out of the community. And that is one of our biggest issue right now. Because as you can know, Grand Spen is actually a water-logged community.
because we are situated on a swamp area.
The parish has not been experiencing rainfall over the last few days, but the residents remain concerned.
We ask anybody, Prime Minister, the MP, the councillor, anybody who can assist us, suppose to kind of should be in and assist us and make sure say the community of Grand Spen live nice and happy and peaceful.
Meanwhile, Member of Parliament for Western St. Thomas James Robertson says he's aware of the issue. He noted that the issue resurfaced following heavy rainfall in November. Mr. Robertson says the NWA and CHEC will be meeting next week to determine the design of what is to be built to accommodate the infrastructure damage. Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
A new year with the same old problems. Deplorable roadways. This time, taxi operators in Islington St. Mary are calling for an urgent fix to the main thoroughfare. Like other operators across the island, they say they have to be spending thousands of dollars to fix their vehicles due to damage caused by the poor road conditions.
The road one work on from Portmore was straight to Islington. Since the rain, we have terrible problem. The whole then get bigger, deeper, everything. Then terrible weather. We want decent paving from Portmore to Islington. To Rosen, definitely, because Rosen terrible too.
Another concern, too, is that substandard material is being used by the authorities. Hence, the lifespan of the millions spent to fix the roadway is short-lived.
So we need the government to set up a system back where we set up a system like public work, where all of the government fix all of the road them. And it depends on one MP and a councillor. Because they not represent the people like one time.
So public work department was much better.
Yeah, of course. When they mash up public work, we're in a trouble. The MP is not for the people again. So we can't depend on them. We have to depend on them when election time. We see them come fix one little piece like them a grant with favor.
Over 13 pounds of cocaine, 55 parcels of compressed ganja, and over $1 million in cash were seized in Warminster, St. Elizabeth on Thursday. The marijuana is valued $2.2 million Jamaican dollars, and the cocaine has a value of $186,000 US. Lawmen from the Narcotics Division conducted the anti-narcotics operation about 7:30 last evening in the community. The police, in carrying out a search of the premises, found the drugs all packaged for export. One man who was seen at the house ran on the approach of a lawman. In the meantime, the police have listed Cetron Smith as a person of interest. He is to report to the Narcotics Area 3 office in Mandeville by 10 a.m. on Saturday, January 6. And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but stay with us, more stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Have statisticians been measuring the economy's growth correctly? That's a question being asked this afternoon by at least one economist. Details in this report. Jamaica's economy has not exceeded the 3% marker in years. This despite significant investments in multiple sectors and improvements in other macroeconomic indicators. For the calendar year 2023, the country's gross domestic product is expected to be just over 2%. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, is predicting that growth will be just under 2% at 1.8% for 2024. But economist and lecturer in the Department of Economics at UWI Mona, Dr. Samuel Brathwaite, has raised concern.
I think the question that we need to ask is, are we truly capturing the level of economic activity? Because very often all we hear are these dismal numbers of how slowly the economy is growing and so on. And I'm not saying that that is an incorrect characterization, but it very well might be the case that we're lowballing what is happening.
A point which financial analyst Dennis Chung is in agreement with. He also believes that the country can do much more. Mr. Chung says to get the improved GDP growth, focus must be placed on an efficient public transport sector, crime, tourism linkages, and increased tourist arrivals.
I was in Bahamas a few weeks ago, Sanjay. I mean, we're talking about 4 million tourists a year. There are 10 million tourists a year, right? So we need to look at the things that are preventing us from getting to 8 and 10 million tourists a year. And that is what we need to focus, and that's what we're not doing. we're looking at things that really don't move the needle. And therefore, I think 3% is small in comparison to what we have the ability to achieve, but we're just not focusing on the right things.
In the meantime, Dr. Brathwaite says there needs to be a rethink of how economic data is calculated.
From time to time, countries have to consider some recalculation, some rebalancing as to how they approach figuring out the level of economic activity. That is how they calculate GDP in an economy. Because when you look around Jamaica and you see what's going on in terms of construction, you see the growth in terms of the real estate sector. You look at how some people live in terms of the cars they buy and what have you, and you ask yourself the question, are we truly capturing the full extent of economic activity?
And it's now time for the Business Minute. Agricultural produce and food accounted for a quarter of total exports from Latin America and the Caribbean in 2023. The Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, says the export of this category of goods more than doubled compared to the world average of 10%. The sector also accounts for about 6.1% of the region's gross domestic product, GDP. Agricultural produce and food account for 4% of global gross domestic product. In its latest trade monitor, the IDB says the post-COVID period has been challenging for the agri-food sector. This is due to less dynamic demand, geopolitical issues, and new regulatory climate requirements. Further afield, Google is rolling out a test that restricts cookies on the latest version of its Chrome browser. Those are the little programs that track you on the internet and why you may see an ad for jeans seconds after you searched for them. Instead of cookies, Google has its own software tools designed to replace them. While some are cheering the change, others worry Google could corner the market for targeted advertising by eliminating third-party cookies. The company wants to get rid of cookies in Chrome by the end of the year. And that's it for the Business Minute. Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, 4 people are dead after a plane crashed shortly after taking off from JF Mitchell Airport on the Grenadine island off Bequia on Thursday. Local media reported there were 2 children, 1 adult and a pilot on the ill-fated flight. The aircraft was en route to Huanora Airport in St. Lucia. On the international scene, a 6th grade student was killed and 5 others wounded during a shooting at a small-town Iowa high school on Thursday. Authorities have identified 17-year-old Dylan Butler as the shooter. Butler, who is also a student at the school, died of what investigators believe is a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And South African Paralympic and Olympic sprinter Oscar Pistorius has been released from prison on parole more than a decade after fatally shooting his girlfriend. A parole board granted his petition in November on the grounds that he had served half of his 13-year sentence for shooting Reva Steenkamp, making him eligible according to South African law. Pistorius shot Miss Steenkamp multiple times in 2013 through a door, claiming he had mistaken her for a burglar. He will be subject to parole conditions until his sentence expires in 2029. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Amoy Harriet.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Jeremy and Brown will have your midday sports report.